So it's been requested that we go over the 311 site plan. So we'll do that. I'll draw that whole thing. And then my goal today is we need to talk about stretch. And I would like to talk about mirror and rotate. So a few things on the docket today. So here's what I'll do. Hopefully I can get both of these on the screen at the same time. And let's see. There we go. Oop. Okay. So I'll just start from point 0 as if we were kind of starting the assignment, and we'll draw all this together. So I'm going to click on Start New Drawing, or if you have your template file, you could start with your template file as well. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make my units appropriate. And I know that because I'm drawing a site plan here, it's going to be in decimal units. So I'm going to go from architectural to decimal. And I know that I'm going to need a few different layers here. Oh. Let's see. So we need to have 1, 2, 3 different layers. Did you have a question?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm so glad we're doing this.
Oh, good.
Hour long last night, and then so it's like 4:30 today here.
Oh shoot. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We'll get it cleared. He's like, yay. Oh, good. I'm a big proponent of, at least the way I learn, I like to watch, I mimic, right? I'm a big mimicker. And we're very, usually like design professionals, right? Engineers included, contractors included, are very visual people. Like you can really kind of see that end product in your mind. So to see it on screen, I think is effective for us, right? So if there's any time that you have a problem, just let me know and we'll draw it on the screen so you can watch. Okay, so we're gonna create a few layers here. And we'll do, the first one will be, let's do the proper, it's killing me to do C-prop, but I'll do it, C-prop. And that one looks like it's, let's see, a border 2 for the property border. Okay, so line type, load, border 2, okay. And while I'm in here, I'm just going to load the other ones to make sure they're there. So border 2, hidden. I'm going to load hidden. Okay. And then continuous. All right. So this one's border. And we'll create another one called the setback. So we'll do a hidden line type there. There we go. And then continuous line type for the road. So one more, and we'll do C-road. And that will have a continuous line type. And then we're going to go back and we're going to assign colors to each of these. And it looks like we don't really have, anything defined in here. So I'm just going to look at the drawing and I'm going to say that this is a very heavy line, this is probably a medium line, and then this is like a thin line, right? Heavy, medium, light. So the heaviest one will be the property boundary here, which we'll make red because that's the heaviest. And then we're going to do the setbacks, which will be a medium. So I'll step down probably to cyan there. And then we'll have the road, which will be white. We'll do white. So that steps down again a couple steps from there. And then I know that I'm going to have some text on here, so I'm going to create a text layer. So I'm going to call that one A-anno, so annotation-text. And that one is going to be probably a white or maybe a number 8, and it's continuous. So everything looks good. I just like to make sure that I didn't happen to drag any settings through my layers that I didn't want, right? Everything looks good. Let's see, draw the site plan, start at 0, 0, label the lots and the road. Text is 3/16 tall, okay? So text is 3/16, which means that I'm gonna have to create a text style, right? See, this is stuff, all this stuff I'm doing right now, this is stuff that you should put in your template because you'll always use the layers, you'll always use the text styles, right? And it's already, you know, we haven't been here very long, 9 minutes, but it's taken me 9 minutes to get it set up when if I had it in the template, then I could just open it up, start drawing, right? Yep. When you go to the Save As, where it has the dialog box, there's a drop down underneath it that you choose DWT in. Yep. All right, so I'm going to go to Annotate, and I'm going to go to my text styles here. We're going to create a text style, and I'm going to use the Arial text, and this is going to be annotative, and we want it to be, let's see, the lots in the road is 3/16 of an inch. Okay. Oops. And then we're going to have a second text style. So actually maybe I should, well, we can't rename the standard. I'm going to click on New. And this one will be called 3/16 inch tall. All right, so we'll do that one again. Oh, I forget. Okay. So that's 3/16, and it changes to decimal format because I'm in decimals right now. So 0.18750 is still 3/16, so it'll work either way. So I've got 3/16. I'm going to set that current, and then we have another one, 3/30. So really, by clicking on annotative and just typing in 3/16. So
okay, so it'll automatically convert it.
yes, yep, exactly. So because I'm in decimal, it said decimal, but if I was in architectural, it would say 3/16. All right. When I hit enter, it's going to close that. So I'm going to do one more. So click on new, and we'll call this one 3/30 seconds. So click on 3/30 seconds, and I'll change this to 3/30 seconds, and it's annotative, and everything looks good. I know that I probably am going to be doing using the 3/16 tall first. So I'm going to click on 3/16 and hit set current. I'm going to close that out. Okay. So the first thing, oh, and then determine the plot scale, because we need to really know the plot scale so that we can set our annotative scale and have the text be the right size, right? So all of these things, obviously it's the instructions, and it's like, yeah, I should read the instructions first, right? But I read through the instructions, and it gives me a list of things that I need to generate in my file first. So I'm good to go. For me, right, immediately I'm going to think about setting up my paper space, because without fail, the client always stops in and says, hey, can I get a print of that? And so in my mind, I'm thinking, somebody's going to stop in and want to see this, right? So I always set up my paper space next. So I pretend like I'm going to print. This is the shortcut way of doing it, right? I could set up my page in here, or I could right click and I could go to Page Setup Manager, click on New. We could do 11 by 17 PDF. Hit OK. And I'm going to change this to my Adobe 11 by 17. Extents here, center the plot, 1:1, landscape, because this is a landscape drawing. And then our pens will be LaserJet. So that all looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK and hit set current and close that out. And now that page is set to 11 by 17, right? One layer, now that I'm in paper space, one layer that I forgot to create was my viewport layer. So I'm going to create a viewport layer, and we will make that one non-printable, right? So that I can create my viewports on here, and they won't print. So I'm going to select my viewport and change that immediately. You know, all very good habits. And I'm remembering right now, but I will tell you, you know, you start working and you start creating a lot of these drawings in an office, and you forget, you know, you forget to change the viewport. So I'm not always that great at remembering everything. Okay, so I've got my piece of paper ready to go. I've got all my layers, my units are set correctly, so it's time for me now to draw this. And the first thing that I'm going to do in drawing this is I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to decide which way I'm going to draw this. So if this is north, east, south, and west, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, okay, well, if I start here and I move this direction, That's northeast, so that bearing seems correct. So if I start drawing that way, then the drawing should ideally go that way, right, and look correct. If I start going this way, it's northwest. Northwest is this way, this direction. And so this goes that way, not the other direction. So if I start here and I draw that direction, my bearings will be opposite, right? So I'll have to think about drawing them the opposite way. So I think the best way of going about this is to draw this direction. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. So I'm going to change to my proper layer here for drawing, see property line. And I'm going to initiate my line command. I thought about doing polyline, but I already know with this drawing I have to get out of my polyline, so I'm not going to. So I'm going to click on poly or line, and I'm going to type 0, 0, enter to start my command. All right, and I'm going to start typing in my bearings here. So I'm going to type at 183.580, and remember, don't put a foot mark, right? If you put a foot mark, then AutoCAD won't recognize it when it's in decimal format. So 183.580 at an angle of north 29 degrees 56 minutes 4 seconds east. So I just looked down there, I got the at, right, because it's a relative input. I have the dimension of the line, and then I have the bearing, north 29, 56, 4 east. Okay, hit enter, and everything appears to be looking good. I have to hit escape, and I have to zoom extents to get that line in my view. So that looks good. Now, this is likely where you hit your first stumbling block here, right? Number one, it's a curve. And when I go up and I look at this curve table to get the bearing, it's northwest, right? Northwest is this direction, which means if I draw this line starting here, it will go that direction. It won't go from here to there, right? So there are two ways that we'll combat it, right? There's two ways we can combat it. We can draw the line and move it into place because the bearing and the length of the line will be correct. It will just have gone the wrong direction. Or I can change this from northwest to southeast and we'll get the same line and it will be correct, okay? So I think I'm going to draw the line and then I'm going to move it into place. And I somewhat prefer that method because although it's pretty easy just to put a south and an east in there, I tend to just like me personally to type things in the way I see them on the page, right? And then to move it into place, knowing that at least I typed it in the way the page said, right? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on line and start here, snap to my endpoint. Oop. Click. And I'm going to type at 67.424, right? 67.424 at an angle of north 70 degrees 33 minutes 55 seconds west. So that looks 67.424. That looks pretty good. 70, 33. Okay, enter. And of course, just like we suspected, it went the wrong way, right? So I'm going to grab it and I'm going to come up here to the move command. I'm going to click on that endpoint and I'm going to just move it right there into place. That's all you have to do. And if you had drawn it with a southeast directionality, it would have generated that way. All right, so we've got curve 21 now. Let me zoom out a little bit. So curve 21, L for line, enter, click. So curve 21 is going to be 28.231. Oh, and I forgot the at symbol. At 28.231 at an angle of north 85 degrees 26 minutes 27 seconds west. Something went wrong there. Northwest, right? So, I thought we only had one of those that did that, but this one does it too. So that makes sense because I have a north, east, southwest. So northwest is that direction. So this one as well, I'm gonna have to grab it and hit M for move. Okay. I know it's a little bit odd. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Again, I could have typed southeast and it would have been just fine, but I choose to kind of draw the other, to draw a different way. Now, those are the chord lengths, so that's essentially the line from here to here and the line from here to here. And I'm just going to continue drawing all of my lines here, and then I'm going to come back and do my curves. So I've got these two curves, and now I have a line that's southeast. So southeast goes that way, and this is ever so slight, so that looks pretty correct. It looks like the rest of them are pretty correct. So L for line, click. I'm going to type at 61.851 at an angle of south 89 degrees 49 minutes 0 seconds east. Okay, so there's that line. I've got this line here. So at 35.937 at an angle of south 89 degrees 49 minutes 0 seconds east. Okay, and I have another curve here, so that's curve 20. Okay, so we have a southwest, so that one might go the opposite direction as well, so we'll just move it into place. So we're going to type at 54.463 at an angle of south 83 degrees 13 minutes 54 seconds west. Oh, that went the wrong way, so I'm going to have to move it into place. M for move. There we go. So we're splicing all these lines together. I've got a southwestern line here, L for line. I'm going to type at 141.590 at an angle of south 0 degrees 11 minutes 0 seconds west. Okay, now we've got a few more to go here, and we're going to type at 90.000 at an angle of north 89 degrees 49 minutes 0 seconds west. Okay, and okay, we've got my second one here at 90.000 at an angle of north 89 degrees 49 minutes 0 seconds west. Okay, we're getting down to the very last one. And again, you know, I think some of these this might have a tiny bit of, there's something weird when it comes in joins, might not quite join, but we always want to draw this last segment, right? Just to make sure in the real world that everything looks good. So I'm going to type at 154.752 at an angle of north 89 degrees 49 minutes 0 seconds west. Okay, and it may not completely, it looks like I got pretty close. So we'll just leave that alone. Looks pretty good to me. And there is our boundary. Okay, so we do still have a few more things to do. Oop. We need to draw these connectors here. And then we need to offset this, and then we need to offset our road here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in there, and we'll draw this first one, and that looks like it's at the very end of curve 22. So L for line, I'm going to initiate it there. I'm going to type at 137.152 at an angle of south 0 degrees 11 minutes 0 seconds west. L for line, and the next one looks like it's going to be in between these two pieces. So I've got that piece, and I have this one, I have that one. So L for line is going to be at the end point of those two. And it's going to be at 134.998 at an angle of south 0 degrees 11 minutes 0 seconds west. Okay. So we have that portion of it generated. Let's zoom out here. And the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create these arcs to curve this, and then I'm going to scale it up, right? Because as I'm drawing right now, this is in decimal inches, and we need to scale it up to architectural to be able to create our 10-foot setback and to offset this 30 feet, okay? So I'm going to draw my arcs here. Curve 22. Curve 22 has a 185-foot arc. So I'm going to choose arc, the start, end radius, start, end, 185, enter. So I started here. Again, this confuses me too, right? I have a hard time visualizing this for whatever reason. But if I start here and I end here, that's going clockwise or counterclockwise, which is positive direction. If I start here and I go here, it's going to be clockwise, which is negative, meaning if I start here and I go to there as the start and end point, the arc forms on this side. And if I do it the other direction, the arc forms on the opposite side, okay? Not a big deal. If you get it wrong the first time, just do it the other way and you'll have it. My second arc is C21, and that has a 185 arc as well. So we're just going to go back to start and radius again. Click, click, 185, and don't put foot, enter. We have a slight arc there. Okay, and then our final arc has a 225-foot radius, and that's a C20. So my arc and 225. There we go. Ever so slight, there it is. So that looks pretty good. Now really, you could take these and you could make a new layer called chords. So you could turn them off visually, or you could delete them. You don't really need them anymore. I don't like to delete things out of my drawings because inevitably somebody wants you to prove how you've drawn something. Hey, prove to me that those drop lines are correct. And you're like, oh, I deleted them, you know? So usually I'll create another layer if I'm about to delete lines, and instead of getting rid of them, to prove it's drawn correctly, right? You can say, well, here they are. I just turned them off. So C prop chords, and we will make those, make them white, and we'll make them a hidden line type, and we will turn them off. Okay. So I'm going to grab my chord here. I'm going to grab my chord here, and I'm going to use my drop down, change these to the chord layer, and immediately it says, hey, you've turned those off. Great, right? So now they're turned off. So we have our property boundary here, and now it's time to scale it up, okay? So I'm going to take this at this point, and I'm going to use the scale command, and I can select it first or select it after. My tendency is, you know, I like to select first, and I'm going to click on scale, and then I'm going to click on, this is my base point, but really the base point doesn't matter a whole lot. Although I know that if I click on this point, it will scale kind of this direction, right, as opposed to like from the center. And it says specify your scale factor, which is 12, enter. And now I have my property boundary, and it's all the right size now. It's all the right size for architectural means. So I'm going to change my decimal format into architectural now, because at this point, if you wanted to work with it, right, in an architectural manner, you could draw a house on the property boundary to see how it fits, right? You'd be drawing in feet and inches. So this is the point where the civil engineer maybe departs and you start creating an architectural site plan or doing whatever you need to do, okay? So I've scaled it up. Now it's time for me, I'm going to create a 10-foot setback. Now I can use the offset command to offset all of these boundaries in 10 feet, right? And I'm going to do that, but I'm going to polyline edit all of these lines first. So I'm going to p edit, and the reason I'm doing that is because if I use the offset command right now, right, offset, and then I type 10-foot, enter. I can do it. Now we all know how to use trim, but before we didn't, right? But if I start offsetting these, they're all separate pieces. Well, although I'm kind of halfway there anyway, right? If I'd p-edit it, I could make this boundary all one line, and then I could offset it one time in, right? We'll just continue on. Now I know how to trim though, so I'm just going to trim. T, R, enter, enter. I'm going to trim, trim, trim. Oop, this little guy needs to be deleted. T, R, enter, enter. Trim, trim. Those go all the way up, so, yep.
So what's the difference between the p-edit and like exploding it?
So p-edit will take lines that have been exploded apart and join them back together.
Oh,
It
I
does.
thought that's what exploding was that they join them. So
Exploding breaks them apart,
exploding breaks them apart.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
and p-edit brings them back together.
Okay.
So I'm just going to trim these out. That looks pretty good, right? So there we go. Looks pretty good. So I've got my setback now, and I'm going to grab these and I'm going to put them on a different layer, which will be the setback. And I'm going to remind you of a command, match properties, MA, enter. And I'm going to click the layer that I want to match other layers to, which is this cyan one. Click. And now anything I touch, click, click. There's the magic right there, right? Click, click. And I can go around and I can match all of those, hit escape, and I don't have to select them and use the drop down to change the layer anymore, right? I can use match properties. So I've generated my property boundary, I've generated my easements. Now it's time for me to generate my road here. So I'm going to offset again. And this time my distance will be 30 feet, 30 foot, enter. Click, 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 click. Click, 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 right? So easy, so easy. This guy's over here like, And I'm gonna grab all those and I'm gonna change those to my road, C road. There we go. L for line, and I assume these come in somewhat right there. And the other one is at the end of this right there. Match properties again, MA, enter, click, click, click. So I've matched all of my line properties, right? Everything looks pretty good. I want to see my dashes though. I don't see any dashes here, right? And I'm about to do annotation, so I'm going to kind of take a break from drawing because I have a lot of that done. And I'm going to put this on a piece of paper and see what scale it's going to scale at, so that when I create my my text and I change my LT scale so the lines will dash, I'll know what to input. So I'm going to go to my layout now, and I'm going to click in my viewport and just kind of drag this out so I can see it, right? Okay, click out. It doesn't give me any indication of what the scale should be, right? But I can at least see it there. So I select my viewport and I drop down here. I change it. I probably would start at like 1/16. Too big. 1/32. That looks pretty good. Okay, fits nice on the page. I have room for notes. Okay, I think 1/64 would be too small. I'm gonna open something else up here real quick. There we go. If we go all the way to the end of this booklet, here is our scale factor chart. And we've got 1/16 is 192. That's the scale factor for 1/16. And what did we use? 1/32. So 1/32 would be double that. It would be 384, right? And I'm looking at this because I need to know half the scale factor to input my LT scale. So 1/16 is half of 1/32, so that's the number I'm going to use for my LT scale. And I'm going to go back into my model space here. I'm going to type LT scale, line type scale. And I'm going to type in 192 and my lines dash. And I'm going to tell you that this is kind of magical today, right? Everything was working. It doesn't always happen that way, right? You know that. Sometimes it doesn't work and you have to try a different setting. So if 192 hadn't worked, I would have tried 96 because that's half of that, right? And if 96 didn't work, I would try 48 and then 24 and then 12 and then 6 and then 3 and then 1 and then half, right? To see which one makes this look right. And we have a way of going about this. We have a method like start with half the scale factor. But in this case, it's not wrong to just make it look correct, right? Nobody's going to go in and check the settings and say, oh, your LT scale is off. Those dashes are not perfect. This is one case where that won't happen, okay? We're just going to make it look right. All right, so we have our LT scale here, and we know our scale factor. These are going to be scaled at 1/32. So when I go to put my text in there, I know the annotation scale to set my model space at. All right. So I look here, and I'm going to be typing in some text. I won't do all the text, but I will do some so you can see me do some of it. We'll do lot 313. And I assume, let's see, the lots and the road are 3/16. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my annotation scale to 1/32. I'm going to make sure my little lightning bolt is turned on here. If you ever have trouble where you've added annotation and it's very clearly there, and then you go into your paper space and it doesn't show up in your viewport, it may be that you don't have this lightning bolt turned on. Okay. So now it's time for me to create some text, and I go over to annotate, and I'm going to choose the 3/16 inch tall text, which is the one I want, and I'm going to create some single line text. And it says I'm going to do a justification. I want to do top or middle center, MC, click. Specify the middle center point of your text. Okay, right here, click. Specify your rotation angle, 0, enter. And I'm going to type lot 313. Okay, and I'm going to click over here, click, lot 312. And click, lot 311. Okay, so I have all three of those. Now I could use the text tool and I could start generating more text, but also remember I can copy text. So I could CO, enter, copy, or I could go up to home and choose the copy icon. Remember that? I can copy this, hit enter, and I could copy that up there, right? So really in AutoCAD, you could say that you really only have to generate one of a lot of items, right? I only have to generate one piece of text because I can copy it around. I only have to change the layer on one line because I can match properties, right? So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to type Brook Lane and hit enter, enter, and I've got my text there. Now it's time for me to draw some smaller text here. So you'd want to put the bearings on here. And I'm going to, that will be 3/32. Okay. And let me just clarify this. I know there's a lot of 3/16, 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, set your scale. Are we scaling? Where do we scale? There's a lot of things that have similar terminology, right? Which is why I don't really believe in a lot of books for AutoCAD and technology like this, because we use a lot of the same terms for everything, right? But let me just say this. This text is going to be this size, right? Because number one, in the text style, you have defined it to print at 3/16 inch tall. All right. That means that when we view this text through a viewport, it will look 3/16 of an inch tall. All right, on your piece of paper. This text is the right size in paper space because we've said that it's going to be plotted at 1/32 of an inch scale, right? So we've said, you know, our piece of paper is here. This viewport is set to be scaled at 1/32 of an inch. That means that if you print this paper out and you take a ruler and you measure anything on here, 1/32 of an inch is equivalent to a foot in the real world. That's what that means, okay? And if I look at this text and I measure it, let's see if I can get, I need to set my precision a little lower. Let's change it. Okay. See if I can get a reading here. 3/16 of an inch tall, right? So 3/16 of an inch tall on the paper, that's how tall, 3/16 of an inch, that's how tall we wanted it, okay? All right, so the idea is that we create a text style that says, when it's printed, I want it this tall. And we use a viewport to scale our drawings. And within model space, we say, we don't care how tall this is. We're going to print it at this scale, and it needs to read a certain height, right? There's a chain of events happening, right? Okay, so we'll create some smaller text. I'm going to change this to 330 seconds. 330 seconds. And I'm going to go back to my, single line text, and I'm going to just type in some text here. So I come over here, single line text, justify, top, middle center, click, enter, and I'm going to type in 90.000 foot. M for move, and I'm going to kind of move it into place. And then I have to type this text down here. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to copy it. Okay, click, click. I can change it. North, 89 degrees, 49 minutes, 0 seconds west. Okay, so there's the smaller text. Now, not to confuse you, but if you don't have this annotation scale set correctly, right? If this was 1:1, it's tiny, goes away, right? Because that text is set to be 1:1 scale, meaning it's actually going to it's going to be 3/16 of an inch tall on here, and it's sitting on a site plan that's, I don't know, 400 feet wide, right? So a tiny little piece of text that's 3/16 of an inch tall next to a 400-foot wide site plan is going to be tiny. You won't be able to see it, right? If I change this to, let's do a big one, 1/128. Oh, it's way too big, right? Because we are zooming in a lot more times to get that scale factor. So it has to be big in order to scale correctly. I change it to 1/32, looks pretty good, right? But this is effectively, it's changing the size of this text so that when it prints on that piece of paper, it is the right height, right? It adjusts to the scale. So this will be 1/32, and your text is the right size. Okay. Okay, so now I would really here be ready to print. My lines are not working correctly. Yep.
How do you get your text vertical?
Vertical? Oh, yeah, good question. Rotate it. CO, copy. That doesn't faze me. It looks really weird and you panic. You're like, oh, wait a minute, right? It's giving me a preview of all the different scales I've changed to in this drawing. I can grab it. RO, enter, click. Click in the middle. Ooh, that was odd, wasn't it? This one might be better as maybe a multi. That's weird. I've never seen that before. We'll do one at a time. Oh boy, good question, Sky. Let's see here. I would say you could just rotate it here. That's really odd. What we may need to do is do multi-line text. Let's see here. And let's see what we've got here. I'm going to maximize this here for a second. RO, enter, click, enter. That's really weird. Is this what yours was doing? That is so odd. Let me look here. Yeah, that one's a toughie. I might have to look that one up.
I thought we'd have to add that text.
Yeah.
It's just text. Yeah, you need to add the text. All the text on it.
You didn't have to do those.
Oh, it doesn't say do the dimensions?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not to do
Not in dimension, not in actual dimension. Okay, we'll leave it off then.
Make your life easy.
We'll leave it off. I wonder if what he meant was not to create actual dimensions. Do you know? That's okay. We'll call it good. No, that's okay. It's good. But this is odd. I've never seen this happen before. But I kind of think, let's see. We had a vertical text here somewhere. So I wonder if maybe they have made it so that you...
Can you just rotate the workspace?
No. Don't ever do that. Nope. That will mess up a whole lot of other things. Let's see. That's odd. Well, let's look and see. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm interested. Hold on 1 second. No. Oh. Nope, that's not it. That's a good question.
So it wouldn't be anything that we would do in Dimension.
No, what's that?
It wouldn't be anything that we can do in Dimension.
To create this text?
Yeah, like, are we just trying to place it?
Yeah, eventually you will be able to, but to use dimensions, but right now you just know text. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have a setting on here that might be in my... Oh, there it is. Match text orientation to layout. That's what it is right there. Apply. Okay. Oh, wait. That's crazy. That should have... All right. I'm pretty positive this is what it is. But I wonder if I need to reboot my AutoCAD maybe to get this working. So let me look at it after we're done with the lecture and I'll figure it out. I think this is what it was. Match text orientation to layout. Let's create some new text and see. Ah, there we go. Okay, so what was happening is this style is still holding on to its old settings. So even though I changed the new text style, it was still holding on to its old setting. And so if you wanted to rotate it, you needed to, I was thinking maybe I needed to reboot AutoCAD to get it to work, but I just needed to create some new text. So RO, enter, I'm gonna click, and then I'm able to rotate. I could type 90 degrees, enter, and it will rotate it vertical. There you go. That one took a second, didn't it? So then we could, if we wanted to, do that. Let's do this. How about if you add all of that text, you can get extra credits on the assignments. Should we do that?
Can you give us an extra day to do it?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, we'll do that. If you want to add all of the dimensions in text formats, then I'll give you extra credit. We'll give you, that's quite a bit of work, right? How about 5 extra credit points? We'll do that. Okay?
5 hours at the other text.
Oh dear.
When do we get that? And then
Let me go to Canvas here. I will change the due date. Let me change the due date. What's today? Wednesday. Let's make it Sunday. Let's see. Okay. 3/11. Edit. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll make it Sunday. That way, if you want to add all that and get the extra credit, you can do that. See, just like that, done. Okay. All right, so that's how you're going to do it. And then for the curve table, there's that little curve table, right? Don't let it mess you up because really it's just text, right? So you can come up here and we can do multi-line text or single line even, and you could say justify, and we want bottom left. And I'll click here and I'll type C20, and maybe I'll tab, make some spaces, and I'll do south 83 degrees, da, 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 whatever. Some more spaces, da, 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 some more spaces, da, 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 right? And that essentially I could, with spaces in between, generate these, and then I could just copy these down. CO, copy. And I know you may not think of that right, and that's fine. So I'm copying it down. We'll do, see how my little cursor is giving me a dimension. So I could type 4'6", 4'6", enter, and I get a second one. And then to change that one to look like this, bless you, you can just click on it and change the text, right? And I could grab this one and CO copy and do the same dimension down again. 4'6", enter, right? And then what you do is just draw lines around it. So I would just draw lines around it. Again, you're probably like, I didn't think of that, right? I'm gonna make the lines first and then it'll come with time, trust me. So.
We're like overthinking it, like, what's the size of the curved table?
Right. No, I get it. You want it perfect and you want to get it right, and then you're like, oh, I could have just drawn the text and drew a box around it, right? I think at this point in time, it is just as easy as that, right? I remember learning AutoCAD, and I was like, you know, we had to do some space planning, and there were couches and chairs and different things, and it sounds funny to say, but you know, when drawing those, they were, you know, you say, well, draw it like a chair, and you're like, draw it like a chair, so draw it so it looks like a chair? Yes, draw it so it looks like a chair, right? Because it's what you're drawing here is a representation of a chair. So that's lines and some arcs, and, you know, that's what it is. You draw things the way they look, essentially. So you can do that, right? And you've got your everything you need here, essentially. Okay. That help? Yeah? Okay. Good. All right. There we go. So we'll get through, I think we'll get through stretch today. And maybe I'll just very quickly go through the two commands. There we go. Let you sit on it. Okay. So I'm going to open up a file under CAD Common and Arch 1310 drawings, and we want stretch. Okay. So let's talk about the stretch command, and I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to move it over a little bit. M for move, enter. Okay. Now if you're going through the videos, right, and you're wondering, you know, hey, she didn't go up and go to home and click on the move command up here, right? She just typed something in. You can in the video see what's going on. So if I want to move something, I can type M, right? And down here at the command line, you'll see what I'm doing. So I just typed M, enter, right? And it says move, and I selected them, hit enter, clicked, and moved it, right? So isn't there a way in YouTube you can slow-mo things? You can change, yeah.
I've been watching the command line on YouTube.
Oh, good, good. Okay. So you, it's like, brr, brr, brr. So you can do that if you want to capture the command. Yep.
I don't know what it's called. Like, I have the same kind of thing. Like, I have to zoom in, command or control plus to like see what you're writing on your command, and like turn on my screen to jump. Anyways, so is it just what's the like if there's a box right next to your cursor or the
Uh-huh.
like if you click like line or whatever you work on, then it'll read. I have a box or a display.
Yes. You have dynamic input on. Yes. Do you like it?
No.
Okay. So if you don't like the dynamic input, which I feel like is a very good choice, you can come over here to customization, because I don't think that this little icon is there by default on your computer. So you can come over here to customization, click on it, and dynamic input, you can toggle it on. So if there's a check mark next to it right there, then it will appear here, and you can uncheck that and turn it off, or check it and it will turn back on. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about stretch. Okay. This is really where we sort of separate ourselves from the hand drafters, right? Anybody who still, I guess there's actually not very many people anymore that still hand draft, right? Formally hand draft as opposed to like sketching, which sketching we do all the time. But people who hand draft are like, yeah, you can draw quick in AutoCAD. I can draw quick with my pencil, right? Which is true. I wouldn't say that somebody, they can draw pretty quick. But I think where we really separate ourselves with technology is the way that we can change things very quickly, right? So that's great. You can draw something by hand very quickly. But what happens when the client comes back and says, hey, we want that 5 feet longer, or 10 inches shorter, or, we want to change the roof or whatever, right? That's really where technology beats hand drafting, right? Because we have the ability to open up our drawing and change it very quickly and then print a drawing out. We don't have to, plug our electric eraser in and erase everything and redraw it, right? We can just change it and reprint a new drawing. So, and especially I like to say that now because stretch is really where your modifications get very easy, essentially, okay? So the stretch command essentially allows you to stretch or shrink different objects in, not necessarily your models, in your AutoCAD drawings. So let me show you what that means. Okay, the stretch command will allow me to stretch things out. Right, it's wonderful, or shrink them in very nicely. Do you see our little dimensions updating over there? It's wonderful, right? It's magical, right? When I first started using AutoCAD, I was kind of afraid of stretch because it can be a little finicky. Not in the command, because the command does usually work very well. But the stretch command, I feel like the key to the stretch command and making it successful is selection. How you select your objects really makes a big difference, because if you select them incorrectly, you won't get a good stretch.
Can you stretch with ortho on and keep it super straight?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. So when I do stretch like this, right, the good and bad thing about stretch is that I have a lot of ways of stretching. The good thing is that I can turn my ortho on, F8. F8. There it is. I can turn my ortho on and I can get these really nice, perfectly straight lines, right? And I can turn my ortho off and I can get these really crazy lines that don't make a whole lot of sense, right? There's not a lot of integrity in that. And so when I first started using AutoCAD, I was afraid of stretch because of this, because there was so much, there was a really big, chance that you could mess things up very easily. But when it works really well. So I want to show you the stretch command, and I want to really, more so than showing you the command, talk about how you can select objects so you are successful in your stretch, okay? So I'm going to, and this is going to be your assignment, having to do with stretch. And so I'm just going to run through it essentially, because I think all of these different things that are part of the assignment will be really great to, demonstrate with. All right. So you guys kind of know now what the stretch command will do, right? It will allow you to stretch or shrink different aspects of your AutoCAD files. But what it also will allow you to do is to move objects within your AutoCAD files, okay? So let me just do something here that I already know. I think I need to update this file. Sorry guys, let me hurry and do this. Okay. And I need to do it in a couple of places. Pay no attention. I'm just trimming out some of these things here. This is a different way of going about it, but okay. Okay. So we can also move things in AutoCAD using the stretch command. And what I mean by that is if I wanted to take this window and I wholly wanted to move the window down 12 inches, I could use the stretch command and I could grab this object and I could stretch it down 12 inches, right? I turn my ortho on, F8, and I'd make sure I get a nice straight stretch, but I could move that down 12 inches and it would move that window down, right? And what's really nice about that is that if I were just to grab this window and type M for move and move it 12 inches, right? If you've drawn your drawing correctly, you should be leaving gaps for windows to live in, right, within your wall system. And so if I just move something, then the opening doesn't move with it and I have a gap in my wall, right? Not only do I have a gap in my wall down here, but I have these lines that overlap up there, right? And so stretch will allow you to move things and the elements around them move with it. So you can flex things in your, I keep wanting to say model because I've been doing a lot of Revit stuff lately, but it's not a model. So if I say model, it's not true. Okay. So let's talk about both of those things. We're going to talk about using stretch to move objects and using stretch to alter the geometry of your space, right? Okay, so let's talk about, we're going to add 2 feet to the right side of the house. All right. So the stretch command is this little icon up here. And let's see, S, I think you can get, yep, it's just S. Oh, geez. Got my dynamic input on. There we go. Maybe that's easier though. Maybe I should turn it on because then you can sort of see what I type. Maybe we'll try it for a minute. See if I can handle it. So we can also initiate it at the command line by typing S. Okay, so that's the shortcut command. And I like to use, obviously, I like to use the shortcut command a lot. So we're going to type S, enter. And you're going to select the objects that you want to stretch, all right? And I'm going to hit escape and I'm going to draw a rectangle around some of the objects that I'm going to choose to stretch if I want to take this side of my building and stretch it over 2 feet, all right? So I'm going to click on rectangle here. And I look at this and I think, okay, so basically the way stretch works is wherever your crossing window crosses your geometry when you're stretching. So if this were a stretch command, right, this kind of left side of my selection window, anything that crosses along that boundary turns into a rubber band and stretches. All right, so that means that if I am stretching, let's zoom in here a little bit. If I'm stretching like this wall right here would turn elastic. And this wall right here would turn elastic. And down here also, because that bottom boundary, you see that bottom boundary is grabbing the middle there, those would all become elastic. And when I stretched, they would stretch out this direction. Okay. If my selection window were something like this, the middle of that door, and I'm going to say this, you guys don't know what blocks are, but you will soon. If this door was not a block, then the middle point of that door would become elastic and it would stretch over with my stretch command, right? So if I select down the middle of that door, then it becomes elastic. This piece of the wall becomes elastic. And then where my selection window ends, which happens to be in the middle of this wall, that would become elastic and it would stretch out, all right? Now, the dimensions around this floor plan, they'll also become elastic and they'll stretch with the objects that you stretch out. So you're going to notice not only will my walls become elastic, but as I cross over these dimension lines, they will also become elastic and stretch out as I stretch, all right? So if I were to want to stretch the right side of this floor plan out by 2 feet, okay, let me show you the areas that I would really want to become elastic, okay? This is a block. We don't know what blocks are quite yet, but blocks, they have a certain type of integrity in AutoCAD drawings, meaning if I try and stretch a block, it won't stretch. I have to edit a block to make it different. So when I use the stretch command, if I happen to engage a block, I'm not that worried about it because blocks don't stretch using the stretch command as I am right now, okay? That is different from what I did with maybe like you'll see with these doors. This door is just line geometry. It's a rectangle or lines and it's an arc and geometry stretches, okay? If this door was a block, which doors can be made into blocks, if I stretch down the middle of it, it wouldn't stretch, All right, so I know that's complicated to maybe wrap your mind around, but this is a block, and I can tell it's a block because when I click on it, I click in one place, click, and I get a selection of this entire object. All right, so not knowing what blocks are, just know that. So blocks will maintain their integrity when I stretch, but line geometry will stretch with my stretch. All right, so if I wanted to stretch this side of this house out 2 feet, I would want to have my selection go through this wall, so that portion becomes elastic. Moving down through here, that looks good, that looks good. Yes, I would want to engage this wall, so that wall becomes elastic. If I happen to bring my selection out to here, the door would stretch out, and that would you know, take away the integrity of that door and make it a weird size, and I don't want to do that. So I have my selection go in between the door and the wall. Okay, I move downward a little more, this wall, that looks good, that will stretch. And I get down to here, and because this window is a block, all right, I can bring my selection window through that, and the block will maintain itself, but the wall will stretch around it, all right? Yep.
So what if, like, if you go back up,
Uh-huh.
if you wanted just to stretch like the family room, you didn't want to stretch the study, like, you know what I'm talking about, where you just want to stretch that out?
Uh-huh, yep.
Would you have to like break up that line there?
Right here. You would have to make a gap right here.
Okay.
You'd have to make a gap. We'll do that. I'll do that. I'll show you how to do that. Not this second, but we will do it. Now, if I had moved my selection window from here over to this diagonal, right, this diagonal wall, then depending on where the stretch window hit, like if it stretched here, if it hit there, it would stretch from this point outward. Or if I hit here, it would stretch from this point outward, right? So if I had my selection window go through that diagonal wall, the angle of it would change, which we don't want to do that, right? The idea behind a stretch is to take into stretch with integrity. So you don't want to alter things that don't need to be altered. You just want to change the dimensional size of rooms or, you know, things like that. Okay, so let me stretch this, and then I'll show you the errors that could happen if I had picked a wrong stretch area, right? Before I do that stretch command, you're also going to notice that I started my stretch window way above this floor plan because I want to get all of these dimensions and all these walls, and it came out very far, okay, because I want to capture all of this information here, all right? So I'll do a correct stretch, and then I'll show you what, if I had done it wrong, what would happen.
The stretch window one more time because mine isn't sticking. Like I'll click somewhere else and then it'll just disappear.
Oh, yeah, let me, well, yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to click on stretch, okay, and it says select your objects. Now, if I pick, a pick won't work with stretch, number one. I can't just pick items, like I can't go in here and say, well, I want this, and I want this, and I want that, and I want that, and I want that. We can't do that, okay? The way my selection is going to have to occur is going to have to be with the selection window. And I have to capture everything that I want to stretch on my first try. Because if I miss something and I go back and I pick it, it won't work. Okay, this is very, very finicky. But let me just tell you how much time it will save you, right? So I'm going to click on stretch. And it looks like there's a little pick, but I'm going to turn this into a selection window. So I'm going to click and hold my mouse button. Or not, I'm not. Stretch. Click. And I let go of my mouse, right? I'm going to move my cursor over the objects I want to stretch. Okay? And you're going to notice that things beyond like those dimensions, you know, highlight. Walls beyond my selection set highlight. All right? But this is what I want to stretch. This is going to be my selection set. So I'm going to click. And when I'm done, I'm going to hit enter. So after I'm done selecting, I have to hit enter. And now AutoCAD says, okay, specify a base point. All right, well, I'm going to click, and I'm going to move in the direction I want to go. And I could just click and place the stretch, or I could type a dimension. So your client says, we want this to be 20 feet wider. So I could type 20 foot, enter, and it stretches it over 20 feet, right? And you'll notice that how nicely that stretched, right? And it was because I started up here. You know, I'm above these dimensions. I'm outside these dimensions. And I could even have been up here and it wouldn't matter, right? But I'm all the way out here, I select down, and I go all the way down below that as well, right? So I'm capturing everything over here. Okay. Now, what if I had, I'm gonna hit undo. What if I had misselected an item? So S for stretch, enter. What if I had done this, but I had selected and I had crossed over that diagonal wall up there, right? Click. Enter. Click. You see how, unless that's what you want, right? Maybe your client wants to change the angle of that diagonal. But generally I would say that's probably not the case. But if I select inside that diagonal wall, you see what happens? And not only does it change the diagonal, but do you see how the thickness is not maintained, right? So you get some errors going on. I'm gonna hit undo. What if I had hit S for stretch and I had just selected like the edge of this wall, right? So I thought, oh, I want to move the wall out 2 feet. So click, enter, right? I grab those tags. So now those tags are like, I grabbed most of the tag, the A, B, C, right, things. I grabbed most of it, but I didn't quite get it all, so it's stretching 1/2 of it. Okay, S for stretch. What if I had maybe grabbed inside that wall on accident? That can happen. What if I had S for stretch, come in here and I had, you know, gone too far, right? And I'd hit those doors. Click, enter, click, right? Bad, bad, bad. Unless you like that kind of door, right?
I've seen some weird doors.
I know, right. So, right, these things can happen. If I don't have my ortho on, I'm going to press F8 to turn my ortho off. It is very, very, very easy to get crooked walls. Even if you're eyeballing it and you're thinking, nope, it looks straight, let me just tell you it's not straight, okay? So I'm going to turn my ortho back on, F8, and I've got my ortho on, okay? I'm going to hit escape. So those are things that would happen if I don't get my right selection set, okay? Now, Deb said, hey, what if I just want to stretch out the family room and I don't want to capture all this stuff down here, right? Well, if I type S for stretch and I just go to here, like that, right? It's going to, not good. So what you'd essentially have to do here is, and you guys don't know this command yet, but you'd have to do a break and leave a gap in that wall, and you'd probably have to create like a little area where if I wanted to stretch that, I could type S for stretch now, and I could just capture, see how now, because I'm in that break, I can do that, right? So that would be a way that I could just stretch over the family room, right?
But then you have to draw more to get to the planting.
Yeah, and that frequently happens, right? So you edit something to a certain extent, and then you kind of have to maybe make a break the geometry, mess things up even a tiny bit to get it dimensionally correct, and then go in and reattach the geometry. All right, so let's add 2 feet to the right side of the house. Okay, S for stretch, enter. Click up here, right? Again, I'd over-exaggerate it more so than under-exaggerate it when you're out here in space. We're gonna go as far as we need to, but not too much. Click, enter. Click a base point, move in the direction I wanna go, and I'm gonna type 2 foot. 2 foot, enter. Right, and I know that this was 25 feet, right? So my dimension updated, and I know that's correct. Add 3 feet to the width of the garage. Okay, so we want to take this side of the garage and I want to stretch it 3 feet this direction. Now this is pretty tricky. This is a pretty tricky little selection because well, that window's a block, so that helps a little bit, right? But essentially, let me go through a couple scenarios, right? If I hit S for stretch, enter, and I grab a selection set like this, right? This is going to be a pretty good selection set, right? It's going to stretch this window, this wall out. It's going to leave the window, you know, a specific distance away from the wall, which is kind of what I want. But because I'm passing through the garage door down here, if I stretch that over 3 feet, 36 inches, that door goes to a 13-foot door, right? Which is not what I wanted. So I'm going to undo that. S for stretch. Now what I really want to do is I want to capture this. I want to get above my dimension, but I have to kind of pick it in between here, and I don't really want to touch those tags, right? This is a little game, right? So I somehow have to maybe capture the wall here and get around those tags, right? Or I have to stretch through the garage door and then stretch the garage door back to the size it should be. So you just kind of have to think about those things. I'm really going to try and stretch here and not see, I can barely get through that portion of the wall and around those tags, right? So I keep going. I've got the dimensions, right, on the top and the bottom. I've got all of these dimensions here. I pass the wall. Click, enter. Now I'm gonna click in space, type 3 feet, 3 foot, enter, and that went from 18 feet to 21 feet, which is correct. All right, so that looks pretty good. Increase the garage door opening to 16 feet and center the door in the opening. All right, so we have to stretch the size of this door, and we also have to use the stretch command to move that door. All right, so what did it say? It wanted it 16 feet. So we could have stretched it. It actually would have been fine because it needed to get bigger anyway, right? So I'm going to type S for stretch, enter. And in this case, I'm stretching the garage door, so I don't need to really come down this far, but I do need to grab one edge of it in its entirety. If I came and I just grabbed this piece, right, it would only stretch that, which is bad. S for stretch, enter. Right, click, enter. I click and I move my mouse, and that needed to go, what was it, 16 feet? So 6 foot longer. Okay. I don't like dynamic input, we're turning it off. All right, so I've created my garage door and it's 16 feet, but now AutoCAD says, hey, or no, the directions say, hey, we need to, 3 feet to the width of the garage. Oh no. Here, let's do what I like to do. I like to cross things off the list. There we go. Increase the garage door to 16 and center it in the opening. Okay. So I need to now take this and I need to center it between this line and this line. All right. So I could measure. I could say, well, this is 21 feet. Well, that's from outside to outside. Or, yeah. I could measure the distance between these two walls, 20 foot 8, and I could figure out, you know, how much space needs to go on each side of the door, which is a big pain in the neck, right? I could also maybe draw a line down the middle of the garage and stretch the midpoint of this door to that line that I draw. That'd be a valid way of doing it. So, for example, I could draw a line across and bisect that line, right? I could do that. And then S for stretch, I could grab this entire garage, grab the center point, the midpoint, stretch it to there. That's a good way of doing it, right? And you're thinking, well, but I drew extra lines. Well, they're free, right? We can delete them. It's not a bad way of going about it. Let me undo that. That does require me to draw some extra things and think of that method. So I could do that. But another really easy way of doing this would be to use the M2P. Did we talk about M2P, midpoint between 2 points? I thought we had. Don't remember. Okay. So we have a command called M2P, midpoint between 2 points. All right. And I'm going to start using it a little bit more frequently now. I think I might have introduced it when we did the from command because it's an object snap. But I'm going to start using it a little bit more to kind of help us with a few of these things. So what M2P does is it will allow you to move things and it will choose a midpoint between two objects. That's the way the object snap works. So you specify a beginning point, an end point, and AutoCAD centers whatever object you want to center upon those 2 points you've chosen. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use M2P, and I'm going to do it the wrong way first, and then I'm going to show you the right way. S for stretch, enter. Grab my whole garage door. Click, enter. Now it says specify the base point or displacement. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to grab the midpoint here, shift, right click, mid between 2 points. And that will be from that endpoint, click, to that endpoint, click. All right, and I had an error happen. The door is centered between this point and that point, but let me show you what I did. When I stretched this, I selected the top of the door as my stretch point, right? Click, shift right click, M2P, click, click. So it took that midpoint and it stretched it down to be in line with that datum. Does that make sense what happened? Okay, let me undo that. S for stretch. I grab both ends because I'm essentially moving it. So I'm grabbing the entire thing to stretch move it. Enter. I'm going to pick the bottom now of my garage door because this is in line with that point. They're all in line. And that point. Midpoint, click, shift, right click. Mid between 2 points. Click the first point. It looks weird when you're doing it, but click the second point and I have centered that garage door there. Do that one more time. Okay. Stretch. I'm going to move this object, which means my selection for the stretch will be the entire thing. Okay, enter. I'm going to pick my base point as the middle, click. Now I'm going to do the M2P object snap. Shift, right click, mid between 2 points. The first point, click. The second point, click, and it centers it. Right? No thinking. You have to remember to shift right click, right? But there's no thinking. You have to measure, you don't have to draw extra lines, it just does it for you. Okay, so that's a really helpful command, and we'll start doing it more. I don't think we're going to do the drawing. I wanted to do a little drawing assignment, but I think we'll wait till Monday because we did the site plan today. But we're going to be doing a drawing assignment, and I'll use M2P to center a few things in it, okay, in class. But if I, for example, wanted to center this window now between this wall and this wall, S for stretch, I'm going to grab the entire window, right? Enter. I'm going to grab the midpoint of that window, click, shift right click, mid between 2 points, click, and now I want to specify where it needs to be centered between. So click once, click twice, and it centers that window. See, 5'11", 5'11". This is the best thing ever, right? I wish Revit had an M2P. It doesn't, but I wish it did. Okay, so let's see, what else do we have to do here? Stretch the 3 windows on the garage wall so they're evenly spaced. Okay, so essentially I want to take the middle one and center it, and then I want to take this one and center it between the edge of this window and the edge of that wall, right? And then I want to center this one between the edge of this window and that wall. All right, so I'm going to start with the window here. And again, I'm moving it, so when I move and I use stretch, I have to select the entire object. S for stretch, enter. Select the object in its entirety, click, enter. Now I'm going to pick the midpoint of that object, click, shift right click, M2P, and I'm going to choose the points to center it between. So this end point, click, and that end point down there, click, and now that window is centered between those 2 lines, right? Some things that I feel like are a little confusing when you're choosing the endpoints, you're in the middle of a command and you're moving here and you're zooming out and you're moving here and you're zooming out, which I feel like feels against what you should be doing, right? You're thinking, hey, it should all be on the screen, but that just doesn't really happen a lot in AutoCAD. Okay. Let's center this one between here and here. S for stretch, enter. Select, enter. I'm going to pick my midpoint again. Click, shift, right click, mid between 2 points. All right, I'm going to choose the edge of this window, click, and the wall over here, click. Oh, it went crooked. I don't think I have, oh, I do have ortho on. It must have snapped to something. I'm going to hit undo. Try it again. S for stretch. I'm going to grab my midpoint of the window, click, shift right click, mid between 2 points. It's jittering around. That's probably why I somehow got a weird snap. Click the end point there. We're going to click this window here, click, and there we go. It's centered now. One more. S for stretch, enter, select, enter. I'm going to grab the midpoint, click, shift right click, mid between 2 points. I'm going to grab my first end point, click, panning, 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 zoom in, click, there we go. Okay. One thing I also want to say is that if I go to stretch something, I think I said this, but I want to reiterate it. If I stretch something and I want to stretch all these objects and I click and then I think, oh, wait a minute, I want to grab the garage too, right? It doesn't work to go back and pick a second time, okay? This might work just because it's in line with it. Nope, it didn't. See, it doesn't work to pick that object after you've picked your initial selection set. With stretch, you have to get everything correct the first time, and if you don't, you just hit escape and retry it, essentially. No. Nope. It's just the way it works. You have to grab everything at the same time. Okay, so we've evenly spaced the windows on the garage area. Center the double door in the family room. Okay, well, I'm going to do this one a little bit quicker. So this thing right here, S for stretch, right? I grab the whole thing. I don't touch this wall. I just want to grab the walls next to the door. And I want to center this between this wall and this wall right here. So I'm going to grab the middle of it. Oh, frozen. There we go. Click, shift, right click, mid between 2 points. So I want to center it between here and there. There we go. And we've got add 4 feet to the family room and the dining room. Okay, that's easy enough. I don't want to, change the way this diagonal works. And I don't really want to, worry about the window. So I'm going to hit S for stretch. And I'm going to grab the top of this entire thing. Bless you. Right? I stay out of this realm. I don't, oh, whoops. I stay out of this realm. This not far enough into the drawing, right? If I move to here, that's pretty good. I don't want to get that text right there, so I go right above it. If I happen to get down too far, I'll engage the window and the stairs, which I don't want to do. So it's really just kind of finding that perfect spot right there. Click, enter, and it says stretch it 4 feet. Click, move in the direction I want to go, and I'm going to type 4 foot, enter. And you think, well, how do I know it's stretched? How do I know it's the right dimension? Well, your dimensions will flex with it, so just pay attention to your dimensions before you do it. Okay, center all the windows. I'm not going to do that one right now. I will increase the length of the kitchen counter from 8'8" to 10 foot. So 8'8", S for stretch, and I'm just going to grab the edge of that countertop, right? I grab the whole dimension. If I get down too far, I'll grab the kitchen sink. It does look like it's a block, so I don't think it'll stretch, but we just don't want to engage it if we don't have to. Click, enter, 1 foot, 4, enter, 10 foot. Okay, reduce the width of the stair to 3 feet. So it's 4 foot, we want to make it 3 foot. S for stretch. And this is tricky because do we grab the green lines? Do we not, right? There's not really a clear designation, so we're just going to do the best we can with this one, but I'm going to grab this edge here, right? So I grabbed a pretty good line. I'm going to make sure I capture everything. Click enter, move it over 12 inches. It looks all very easy when I do it on the screen, but let me just tell you, the first time you do it, you're going to have some trouble. So stick with it. All right. Increase the bathroom to 8 foot. Okay, after I do the bathroom, I think we'll be pretty good, and I'll let you guys work on your assignment. But I want to talk through a few things on the bathroom because we need to make it 6 feet, take it from 6 feet to 8 feet, which means we're reducing the study size, which is fine. But there's some interesting things here, right? If I want to stretch here, okay, number one, I don't want to interfere with these doors because if I stretch like this to make the bathroom larger and I, touch the doors, trouble. I don't like that. If I S for stretch and I grab through the bathroom door here, nope, we still get some weirdness happening, right? We don't like that. So essentially what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a stretch that won't interfere with this wall, won't interfere with this door, won't interfere with this door, won't interfere with this door, right? We'll leave the vanity and the toilet alone, but we'll make the bathroom 2 feet wider, okay? Now in this exercise, we're gonna have to sacrifice one thing. We're going to have to, well, no, we won't. No, we won't. I'll show you something else. You could sacrifice the bathtub and you'd have to fix it after, and that's fine. But essentially we're gonna have to S for stretch, and I wanna grab a stretch line across here. Because no matter what we do, the study's getting 2 feet narrower and the bathroom's getting 2 feet wider, okay? So the way I can approach this, I'm gonna select through this area here. When I select the doors in as a whole, all of them will move, right? So this is a pretty good stretch. If I stretch through here, I kind of get in this realm of the bathtub outline, which is weird right here, right? So maybe you're thinking, oh, that might be a good stretch option, but then I, get weirdness with the bathtub. S for stretch. If I take my selection window over, I'm still gonna be making the bathtub a little longer if I don't remove it from the selection set, but at least I'm not altering the geometry of the way it looks, right? So here's a good selection where I start in these walls. Ooh. I start in the walls where not a lot will be, changed weirdly, I guess. I'm grabbing all the doors and I'm not touching the toilet or the vanity. So that's a pretty good selection set to stretch the bathroom. Click, enter, click, and I'm going to type 2 foot, enter. All right, so let me do that one more time. A little quicker this time. Click. Now, before I tell AutoCAD I'm done stretching or selecting my stretch objects, I'm gonna throw a little curveball in here and show you guys that while we are not allowed to add things to our selection set, right? It won't work for stretch. We can remove things, all right? So if you stretch the bathtub and then you need to change it and that's the best way for you, that's great. But if I want to remove the bathtub from this stretch selection set right now, I can. But I have to do it before I hit enter on the select. So this is kind of odd and you would never know it unless I told you, but now you can type R for remove and hit enter. And we're going to select that bathtub and hit enter. Okay, click. Ooh, I got rid of that wall, shoot. We'll fix that though. And I'll type 2 foot, enter, right? I didn't quite get that wall, so I do have a little weirdness, but not too bad in general, okay? But this will give me the opportunity to show you something else, yep.
Is another way, since we know the bathtub's on a different layer, could you like freeze that layer?
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
then you just cut my lid on?
Yeah, totally. You could freeze it and then it would go away. Now, the inherent problem here is you're like, well, what happens right here, right? It's weird. There's a little gap right there. Maybe you just draw a little wall right there. Maybe you leave it alone and people can throw their dirty clothes. Well, we don't like that. We don't like throwing dirty clothes on the floor, right? We could put a little hamper. Right, there we go. We'll have a voice for the ladies. Some shelves or storage or whatever, right? So something will happen there, of course, in the real world. But I just wanted to, just pay attention, right, to what's going on. So we made this a little bit wider, and the wall didn't quite make it with it, right? There is I guess what we could call an informal way of stretching individual objects. Yep.
I was just gonna see if you could do it one more time where you cut out the tub.
Yeah, let me do this first and then I'll go back.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you how to stretch things with the grips on objects. So if you highlight an object in AutoCAD, you get these little blue grips at specific points on the objects, right? So with a line, it's the beginning, the end, and the middle, okay? These grips, when they're blue, they're uneditable. But if I click on that grip, it turns red, and that means it's hot, and you can change it. And changing it means moving your mouse where you want to go and clicking, and it will stretch it. So it's kind of an impromptu stretch, right? You can't do a ton with them, but for example, this wall doesn't come and quite meet that, and the formal stretch command is a little difficult in this area. But if I grab that grip end, click, I can drag it out to there, click, and they meet. Okay, so we can use our grips to move things, right? Very easily. And if I happen to grab the center point of this wall, click. If I grab the center, it moves the entire object. Okay? So you can just start using the grips to kind of move things tiny increments, right? Just to make up for what happened there. Let me stretch this again, and I'm going to leave it the way it is, but I will stretch the bathtub and show you how to take that out. We'll stretch it back 2 feet. So S for stretch, click, oop, stretch. I'm going to stretch this back 2 feet. Enter, click. Oh, sorry, I went too far. Okay, before I hit enter on the selection and tell AutoCAD I'm done, I have to type R. Enter. And now I can click and I can pick. See, I'm click. But I could also, you saw me use a blue selection window, and so you can use a selection window, but you just have to be very careful in here because anything that you deselect, stretch will work so you can remove things, but again, you can't add them back. So if you accidentally remove too many things, then you have to reinitiate the stretch command. So I've removed the bathtub. I'm going to hit enter now, right? Click, 2 foot, enter, and it stretches back. Okay. All right. All right. Any questions on stretch so far? I guarantee we'll go back over this again next class. We'll do a little bit of this. But this will be your exact assignment. You're going to take this floor plan and you're going to complete all of these instructions. When you're done, you're going to freeze these instructions, right? So these are on this green 8 anode dim layer. You're going to freeze that, which means you'll go in here and click on the little freeze sign, right? So I don't think I posted the assignment yet, but I'll do it tonight. So this will be your assignment for this, okay? I want to quickly, and we'll just move through them quickly, but I do want to just show you these 2 commands. I want to show you mirror and rotate, and then again, we can go back over them our next class, but I want to get through them. I won't go too much longer. Let's see. Mirror, where's the rotate? There we go. Okay. Oh, I don't like this file. We'll just use this file here. Let me talk about what mirror will allow you to do. You remember when you had that, there was an assignment where you had to draw there was an object and you perfectly drew one side of it and the other side was a perfect mirrored copy of it, and everybody was like, hey, isn't there a better way of doing this, right? Yes, of course there is. We have a mirror command, and essentially it will allow you to, if you wanted to draw half an object, right, and then to create a mirror copy that's identical to that first object you generated. Okay, so mirror will be used a lot for if you've drawn one thing, you want to make a mirrored copy, you can create a mirrored copy. But I use the mirror command a lot for just copying, which sounds kind of odd. But if I wanted to, for example, if I had two rooms right next to each other, if there were a door or a wall right here, right? And this is probably my number one use for mirror. If there were a wall right here and this were a second room, if I wanted the door mirrored across this wall to create a door in the same spot on the opposite side, I'm going to use mirror for that, right? So I use mirror a lot to create mirrored copies of things, okay? And the way that mirror works is I click on the command and I am prompted to select the objects that I want to mirror. So if I wanted to mirror this door, I would grab the door and hit enter when I'm done selecting. And then AutoCAD is going to ask me to specify a mirror point. So my next task will be to draw a pretend axis that I'm going to mirror that object about, all right? So if I get very close here and I touch the object, right, it will touch, right, and I'll get a double door, okay? If I leave a space in between, like this wall line, it will leave the same amount of space from here to here over here, right? And you're going to notice when I start specifying my mirror line, so I'm going to click, move my mouse, and you see how the object is mirrored right about that axis, okay? So if I turn my ortho off, and you see how it starts to angle, it mirrors it right across that axis. Whether it's straight or angled, we're going to get a perfect mirror image across that axis I specify, okay? So it doesn't really matter how long the axis is, it just matters the orientation of it, if it's perfectly straight or if it's slightly angled, okay? So I'm going to turn my ortho back on, F8, and I'm going to click, and down here it says erase the source object. Do you want to get rid of this one and only keep this one, right? You can click erase the source object. Yes, you could click on yes, but by default it's no. So if I just hit enter, I get a copy of it, okay? So let me mirror a few things in here. The shortcut command is mi, enter. I'm gonna select this lavatory here, right? Select, not lavatory, water closet, I guess, right? Lavatory is the sink here. Enter, and I'm going to specify my mirror point. Click, click, put one in the kitchen. Enter, right? Mom will like that. Toilet right in the kitchen. We'll mirror this sink, right, into the kitchen as well. Mi, mirror, enter. I'm going to select that object, hit enter, click, my mirror point, click, enter. All right, so it's pretty simple. Mirror will allow you to create a mirrored copy. All right, and we have rotate. So sometimes when we mirror things, right, like if you have a women's bathroom over here and a men's bathroom over here, and you've drawn the women's bathroom and you want an identical copy of that over on the other side of the wall for the men's bathroom, right, you can grab a few things. Mi mirror, I can grab a few things, I can mirror them. Click, click. Oh, I didn't get the toilet. Mi. It's odd. Okay, click, click. I've created an exact copy, but maybe I want them to be rotated in a different direction, okay? So usually, not usually, but a lot of times you'll mirror things and you'll leave them in place, but a lot of times you will mirror things to get them into a different space, right? So they're the right orientation, and then you'll rotate them into place, okay? So, for example, let's look at this toilet here. I can rotate it now. I've mirrored it. I've got it in the right spot. Now I want to rotate it. So RO is the shortcut command. Here's rotate up on the ribbon. Click on rotate. I'm going to select the object and hit enter. and then I'm going to pick a base point. Now, if I pick a base point like at the corner here, this base point is where the object, what it rotates around. So if I click the corner, you see how it rotates about the corner. Okay, RO, enter. If I pick the center, click, it rotates about the center. Okay, so usually the workflow is maybe you mirror something, then you rotate it, and then you move it, right? So I mirror it, I rotate it, RO, enter, select, enter, click, and I move my mouse to where I want it to go, and I click to place it. Or I could type something like a degree, 90, enter, and it rotates 90 degrees, and in that case it rotated 90 degrees in the positive direction. Okay, so the workflow is, right, if I, for example, had this toilet down here and I wanted to put it in there, right there, I could M for move, grab it, enter, click, move it into place. Let's do an M2P. Shift right click, M2P, click, click, okay, and then rotate. RO, enter, rotate it into place, right? So you'll use a lot of commands in sequence, move it, copy it, rotate it, then move it, mirror it, rotate it, move it, right? You'll use all these things in sequence to get things where you need them to be. But rotate is very straightforward. You rotate objects, right? I think the only trick to rotate is how things rotate, where the base point is, right? Does it rotate about the corner? Does it rotate about the center, right? And then knowing that usually you move or rotate something or mirror something, and they're all used kind of in sequence. You move it, you rotate it, you mirror it, whatever you do, okay? All right, I'll stop there. That's quite a bit. I do have a small drawing exercise I wanted to do, and I think we'll just do it next time. And in the small, I'll do it in class, I'll do it on the screen here. But I think it'll be helpful, again, like we did with the site plan, right? It's good to see somebody else draw. So I'll just draw a little space, and I'll draw the lines, I'll offset them, I'll mirror things, I'll move things, I'll rotate things, so you can see how the commands kind of all come together so you can draw stuff, right? Which is the ultimate goal. Any questions on any of this so far? No? You look a little worried. It'll be fine, trust me. It'll be just fine. All right, well, I'm going to stop this. Let's see.